Well, I want to echo Carl Flynn's welcome a moment ago, and a welcome especially to those of you who are visiting, who are guests. It is Father's Day, and some of you are here for the big meal today, and you may have had that last night. Anyway, welcome. Glad to have you here. I was thinking a moment ago about how thankful I am for some young fathers I know in this church who really take this ministry of fathering quite seriously and are concerned about the end game, the end product, and are concerned about what their family produces, the kind of children they produce. And I just find that very refreshing. I know there are plenty of moms like that, but I really appreciate guys who are stepping up to that kind of vision as dads. We're going to be for a few moments at 1 Kings chapter 21, 1 Kings 21. If you started your day with less than a good attitude, don't worry about it, because what you're about to read is going to top anything you've got. John Ortberg tells the story of an MIT professor who did a study of Olympic medalists, gold medal winners, silver medal winners, bronze medal winners. And the focus of the study was on their satisfaction level or their happiness level. Gold medal winners, as you might expect, experience the greatest satisfaction or the greatest amount of content or happiness with what they had done and what they had received. Then it was bronze medal winners who experienced the greatest amount of satisfaction and the greatest amount of happiness. And the professor said it's because the bronze medal winners, well, what they tended to do is they would look at the person who finished fourth, and they would say, wow, I am so fortunate, I am so blessed, I could have easily been fourth place and walked away with nothing, but I have a medal. It was the silver medalist that experienced the least satisfaction, because they looked to the gold medal winners and said, wow, if I had just trained harder, if I had just had a better start, I could have had the gold. We're going to look for a moment at Exodus chapter 20 and verse 15. You shall not steal. And this is the part here where you might think, hey, it's Father's Day. That's right. It's Father's Day, and why do you want to talk about stealing? We're not a bunch of thieves. It's for lowlifes. And so couldn't you come up with something more interesting on Father's Day? Well, maybe. There may be more to this, though, than breaking and entering and stealing from someone's home. Sometimes when it comes to stuff or property or what you buy, sometimes when it comes to stuff, it's just never enough. And sometimes when it comes to stuff, if you're like some of us, you'll do almost anything. In fact, you may do anything to get what you want. Their story, 1 Kings 21. Sometime later, there was an incident involving a vineyard belonging to Naboth, the Jezreelite. The vineyard was in Jezreel, close to the palace of Ahab, king of Samaria. And King Ahab said to Naboth, "Let me have your vineyard to use for a vegetable garden, since it is close to my palace. In exchange, I will give you a better vineyard, or if you prefer, I will pay you whatever it is worth." But Naboth replied, "The Lord forbid that I should give you the inheritance of my ancestors." Now here's verse 4, and again, if you woke up with a pretty bad attitude, just read this and you'll feel better. So Ahab went home sullen and angry, because Naboth the Jezreelite had said, "I will not give you the inheritance of my ancestors." And he lay on his bed sulking and refused to eat. That could also be translated, he sat in his lazy boy and pouted and said he was not hungry. His wife Jezebel came in and asked him, "Why are you so sullen? Why won't you eat? What is with you?" Well, he answered her, "Because I said to Naboth the Jezreelite, 'Sell me your vineyard, or if you prefer, I will give you another vineyard in its place.' But he said, 'I will not give you my vineyard.'" Jezebel, his wife, said, "Is this how you act as king over Israel? Get up and eat. Cheer up. I'll give you the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite." Well, big boy, what is wrong with you? You are supposed to be the king, and you act like you're completely helpless. Why don't you get up and eat, and Mama's going to take it from here? And she does. Look at what she does. She wrote letters in Ahab's name. Wouldn't you like to hear more about their marriage? Placed his seal on them and sent them to the elders and nobles who lived in Naboth's city with him. And in those letters she wrote, here it is, this is what she wrote: "Proclaim a day of fasting and seat Naboth in a prominent place among the people. But seat 2 scoundrels opposite him, and have them bring charges that he has cursed both God and the king, and then take him out and stone him to death." And so the elders and nobles who lived in Naboth's city did as Jezebel directed in the letters she had written to them. They proclaimed a fast and seated Naboth in a prominent place among the people. Then 2 scoundrels came and sat opposite him and brought charges against Naboth before the people, saying, "Naboth has cursed both God and the king." So they took him outside the city and stoned him to death. And then they sent word to Jezebel, "Naboth has been stoned to death." And as soon as Jezebel heard that Naboth had been stoned to death, she said to Ahab, "Get up and take possession of the vineyard of Naboth, the Jezreelite that he refused to sell you. He is no longer alive, but dead." Ahab heard that Naboth was dead. He got up and went to take possession of Naboth's vineyard. Pretty nice life, isn't it? You got a problem? Maybe you don't know what to do about it, but your wife takes over. Granted, she does pin something in your name. And basically, they're going to set this guy up, get 2 scoundrels, somewhere over here, 2 scoundrels to sit opposite Naboth, and at a certain time accuse him of this horrible blasphemy and stone him to death. Jezebel looks at her phone, gets a text that the deed is done, and says to Naboth, "You know that problem? It's not a problem anymore." Wow. You could get to a point where you want something so badly You'll do most anything to get it. The back of your order of worship. Let's talk about what people steal, or maybe the better question is, what do we not steal? Obviously, some people take physical property, and if you've ever had that happen to you, somebody steal something, break into your house, or you had somebody steal something out of your car. Somebody came in your backyard and stole tools or a mower or whatever. You tend to remember those things. But most of us do not think of ourselves as thieves, because most of us are not going to do that kind of thing. I'm going, who does that? Now, one reason why we're walking through the Ten Commandments here over these weeks, one reason why I wanted to do this on Father's Day especially, is because one of the things we do as fathers and mothers is we train our children to be moral people. And maybe we do things like we say don't lie and don't steal and don't do this and don't do that, and that's kind of a part of it, and that's a good thing. But sometimes this thing is nuanced a good bit in our own lives. And I may need to ask myself as a father, could it be that I tell my children not to steal and that I model something else? Again, I don't think most of us in this room are going to be taking anybody's physical property. I do remember when we were in Kansas City and an outfit had just delivered fertilizer to our church building, and somehow it just comes up missing. In fact, and it seemed like in that particular building, we just ended up missing lots of stuff. In some churches, if something is in a building, it's sort of seen as community property, and it's just interesting what we'll walk off with. Not you, of course, but other people. Sometimes people will create scams and swindle people. You ever had that happen? Have you ever been a victim of that? You ever been approached by someone, and later on you realized it was a scam? You would never do this, but when I was I was about a senior in high school, and I worked at this burger place, Jack in the Box, drive-through, and I was there at night with all these other guys and women and men about my age, all of us about 17, 18, 19. One night, this older guy comes by, and he tells us that he has electronic equipment that he's managed to secure. It's got some story. He's very articulate, and he managed to convince us that all this was very legitimate, and he was going to sell it to us at just this ridiculous price. And I thought it was kind of silly to give the guy money until all of us started saying, let's do it, and I just kind of joined right in. Didn't give him money yet. He wanted us to meet him at his house after we got off work at midnight. Being the wise people we just took off at midnight. Went to this strange house, dark neighborhood, walked up to the door, knocked on the door, there he was. House dark behind him. We walk in, we sit in the living room. We're all giving him money. He's telling us all about this great equipment. It's going to be delivered in the next few days. Okay. I mean, we're just kind of right there. And we give him money. Now, those of you who are a bit older, you probably think that's ridiculous. And at this point in my life, I think that's ridiculous. But at the moment, it just, you just kind of go with things. A couple of days later, of course, we didn't hear from him. And so we all went back to the house. And there was an older woman. She probably was early 80s, came to the door. And we asked for our friend. And she said, well, no one's here by that name. So when we're telling her, we sat in that living room the other night, and we talked to that man. No, 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 no. But we have lost all this money. There's scams in the world like that where, you find yourself forking out money to make a lot of money. And it's not just 17, 18-year-old guys that get taken in. Sometimes it's folks in their 40s and 50s and 60s out to make some fast money. Some people steal not by scamming others, but by not paying back their debts. I remember being in a church years ago, and there was this awkward situation with these people, and I asked one day, what's the situation? Well, this guy owes all these people money, and he won't pay it back. In fact, he will not even bring it up. And it was awkward. Man, what do you do with that? That's what these people were asking. What are we supposed to do? To have a reputation around town as the guy who buys things and will not pay for them. Sometimes stealing can come in the form of doing work for school that you really didn't do. Saw this some special on the news, I think it was CNN or CBS or something the other night, about term papers that can be bought, and supposedly these are originals. These are originals. And so the idea is, as a student, you get your assignment, and then you go on the internet and you find this person who's going to write your paper. This person writes your paper, and you pay. At least one of these companies offers this guarantee. Now listen to this. We guarantee that the paper isn't plagiarized. That's right. They guarantee that this is original work and that the author hasn't plagiarized it from someone else. You're thinking, this sounds ironic. You're going to turn this in with your name on it, somebody else's work, with somehow the satisfaction that at least it wasn't plagiarized from, I don't know how that works. When you turn work in with your name on it and you know you didn't produce it. I remember when our kids were in school years ago, and one of our kids told us about a friend at school, and they were all doing these papers, and said, oh, she doesn't have to worry, her mother writes hers. Yeah, her mother says she's too stressed, and so she does her work for her. I might want to think about stealing. I might want to think about stealing when it comes to taking advantage of my employers. When I find myself taking what belongs to the company for my own use. I might want to think about stealing when it comes to concealing defects. I'd love to sell you this chair. Won't you buy this chair? Now don't move this chair, because it's got something, it's got a leg that I don't want you to know about. But as long as you don't ask, well, I'm sure not going to volunteer any information. And so I basically take advantage of you. I take advantage of you not asking the right questions, and I feel justified, though I would never want to buy from someone like me. Now, what I'm getting at, for those of us who are mothers and fathers, I need to ask, what do our children see? And what are the conversations they're hearing? People steal for a variety of reasons. I mean, some people steal because they are absolutely desperate for food and just the basic necessities of life. We moved to Alabama years ago, and I was talking one day with this person who dealt with, I cannot think of the factory. Anyway, it was a particular factory, and he was talking about how tough things were economically, and he said, yes, we've had a number of employees who have stolen food for their freezer. I mean, sometimes you just get desperate. Some people steal to support a drug habit. Some people steal because they simply want newer and better. And maybe some people steal because they insist on having whatever they want now. Martin Luther said many years ago, whenever I receive advantage at the expense of another, that is theft. Whenever I receive advantage at the expense of another, that is theft. Now, we're going to look at 3 passages of Scripture here. I want to ask you, first of all, to turn to Luke chapter 12. Luke chapter 12. On the back of your order of worship, this is God's world, and we don't have permission to take matters into our own hands. If I own this chair, you want to buy this chair, I know that one leg on this chair is broken. This is God's world. I do not have permission to manipulate information in order to create an advantage for me. This is not my world. This is not my stuff in the truer sense of that. This is God's world, and we don't have permission to take matters into our own hands. Now look at Luke 12 and verse 15. Jesus is speaking apparently to these brothers regarding an inheritance, and it's a dispute. And he said to them, watch out, be on guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. Life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. Last Wednesday night, I preached in Tyler. I was there, part of a Wednesday evening series. And after assembly was over, I was standing out in the parking lot with a friend of mine, and several young couples were gathered around my friend. And one person was talking to an older lady about how she had counted her dresses, like skirts and blouses and then dresses. She had counted them. And her class had recently read a book that really did promote simplicity in life. And she said, I just wanted to find out, how many do I need? I thought, what an interesting question. I've never done that. How many do I need? Jesus says that life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. This is God's world. That's what counts. Number 2, stealing violates the love command. Stealing violates the love command. Look at Luke 10 and verse 26. I guess actually 25. Luke 10:25, on one occasion an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? What is written in the law? He replied, how do you read it? And he answered, Love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. So, gonna sell you my chair, and you take it home and you find out that one leg is broken, and now your question is, why didn't he tell us that? I mean, we might have bought it anyway, but surely he knew that. Why didn't he explain to us the truth about this car we bought? This house we bought? Why didn't he just tell us, or she just tell us? Stealing violates the love command. When you borrow money from someone and they loan you money in good faith and you don't repay it, you violate the love command. I'm not talking about where you go to someone and you tell them that you're having to declare bankruptcy and you're trying to deal with it and rectify it and work with it. I'm talking about what happens far too often when we lay out our story before someone and we borrow money and then nothing is ever said again. It violates the love command. And finally, number 3, things are not to own us. Things are not to own us. 1 Timothy 6. 1 Timothy 6, beginning with verse 6. If you're not familiar with this might be a great verse to underline. 1 Timothy 6, beginning with verse 6. But godliness with contentment is great gain. That's what it means to really have an advantage. Godliness with contentment. For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. Those who want to get rich fall into temptation. Those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money, not money itself, but the love of money, is a root of all kinds of evil. And some people, y'all get this one, okay? This is real stuff. Some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. I sat in this restaurant, it's been a long time ago, and was sitting across the table from a man who, at least by reputation, was a very fine, godly leader in our community many years earlier. He was known as being a person who helped launch some foreign mission efforts from the States, supporting a particular mission effort. He was just known as an encourager at some very good works. And then the guy just dropped off the face of the map. I mean, he and his wife went from that kind of journey with the Lord to where they didn't even come to church anymore. And they've just moved back to our area, as I recall, from a adjoining state. And I started asking questions about the stories I used to hear about them. And basically what he said was this: well, Our business began to take off, and I guess we kind of went after that. And I don't know that we exactly had our priorities in place. Paul says it here. Some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. Charlotte reminded me of a story yesterday. A friend of ours was telling us about a conversation he had with a guy we know. Our friend was in this conversation with a guy who was trying to sell a car. He'd been their family car for a number of years. He was now going to sell the car. He had a buyer. Our friend said to the guy who was going to sell the car, "Now wait a minute, you've got a buyer, but didn't you say the starter was bad?" And it was really... Yeah, he said, "Yeah, but you see, what I'm going to do is take it over there and just leave it running through the whole thing. They'll never know till, after they own it." Guys, these are people who sat in church buildings every week, who reasoned that way. The reasoning that goes something like this, "Just don't tell them," violates the love command. Would you want to buy something from someone like that? I want to tell you, we've got a real opportunity to bear witness in this community. And I mean right now in the Waco community. And here it is. I'm going to start here, and then we'll kind of get the rest of us. In some quarters, it is almost weird if you don't cheat, if you have the opportunity in school. With some people, it is a powerful witness when you refuse to cheat, not because you'll get caught, but you refuse to cheat because that's not who you are. We moved here 20 years ago. A couple of years afterward, I had coffee one day with Mike Toby, who passed away last year, former pastor at First Baptist Woodway. And Mike singled out a business person in this congregation, and he said, "Wow, I have done business with him again and again. And you talk about a guy that tells you the truth." He said, "If he's going to build something, you can count on his word. And if there's a problem, he'll tell you the whole story." Do you understand the powerful impact? I don't care if you sell insurance or if you work in a retail store or if you offer a service, but when people know they can count on your word, and that what you offer and exchange, you're not holding something back, you're not giving them your junk, you're being straight up. Why? Because that's who you are in Christ. It's who you are. And people learn that if you're selling a house or selling a car or selling a boat or whatever you're doing, the people to deal with are those Christian people, like those people at Crestview, because I'll tell you, they are straight up and they will tell you the truth. And you don't have to worry about what they're holding back or hiding. And I am telling you, that is a powerful, powerful witness to the gospel, and it will be in this city. See, everybody can quote, "Thou shalt not steal." What lots of people long to see are people who will model that. This is what you live like when you take that seriously. How about that? So, if you're a father or mother It starts when they're little. No, son, we pay the full price because that's not well, nobody will know. That's not why we do things. That's not who we are. Yeah. Well, Mama, if you tell them about that, I mean, they're not going to want to buy that. I know, son. But the love command, I wouldn't want to buy something from somebody like that if it didn't work and they trusted me. And our kids grow up seeing that. And grandparents, as they see that in us, that is a powerful witness. Okay, could we think about that this week? I think there's a lot of room for some application here if we'll just think through what we deal with every day, okay? We're going to sing. If you would like prayer this morning, could be that you would just like prayer for your life as a father. There will be some elders at the back and at the front. You can pray with them during this song for your life as a dad, as a husband, as a father. If you're ready to be baptized into Christ, we'd be glad to assist you this morning. Let's stand together and sing.
Lord, you are more precious than silver.